From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Spending a little time out in the woods.
I'm Charles Denny. Tennessee 4-H'ers compete in a forestry judging competition where they learn to identify trees. That story from Cedars of Lebanon State Park in Wilson County, Tennessee, coming up on AgDay.
A big sale of farmland. See who's buying up more than 41,000 acres in several states. As the government offers up some clarity when it comes to tax incentives for making sustainable aviation fuel.
Transportation and aviation fuel. That's the big issue right now.
The impact it could have on producers right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Pioneer brand corn has game-winning statistics like a 10 bushel per acre yield advantage. Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Brooke. Clinton has the day off. We finally know more about the government's plan regarding tax credits for sustainable aviation fuel, with the Treasury Department clarifying its guidance for qualifying for the Sustainable Aviation Fuel 40B tax credit. Now, Treasury has specified the October 2024 updated GREET model must be used to calculate emissions reduction percentages, which specifically related to catalyst inputs for alcohol to jet SAF pathways. It's a minor change and comes with only weeks left before program expiration. So industry officials tell me that the importance of this change is what, if anything, it means for the upcoming 45Z program.
When Treasury announced the guidance, the original guidance for the 40B tax credit, they indicated that there would be a 45Z GREET model. We're still waiting to see whether that applies solely to GREET, to sustainable aviation fuel, or if it is a 45Z GREET model that applies to both transportation and aviation fuel. That's the big issue right now.
Winter says on October 1st, Treasury officials indicated the guidance won't be issued before the end of the Biden administration in January for 45Z. So that leaves biofuels producers in limbo regarding how to calculate the tax credit and negotiate feedstock agreements. So they've asked for a safe harbor to help the biofuels industry in the interim. And it will be up to the Supreme Court to make a key decision regarding small refinery exemptions. A high court announcing it will hear a case from the EPA on the request of small refineries to be exempt from the renewable fuels standard. The Renewable Fuels Association and Growth Energy commenting on the court's decision to take a look at the issue, saying that the Fifth Circuit was an improper venue to hear challenges on SREs. It says the court opinion set up a clear split with several other circuit courts on the question of venue, adding this is precisely the sort of issue the Supreme Court is meant to resolve. An extreme weekend of rainfall prompted hundreds of water rescues in New Mexico. As Laura Aguirre reports, the full scope of the damage is still being assessed.
I am sitting on the roof of my cop car, my police truck. I am completely surrounded by water.
Chaves County, New Mexico Sheriff Mike Harrington found himself in need of rescue as torrential floodwaters swamped his cruiser over the weekend.
Those people here on the west side of Roswell, a lot of their houses are flooded and their cars are flooded.
The Roswell area hit particularly hard after a historical amount of rain fell in just a few hours, washing over roads and through neighborhoods, prompting hundreds of water rescues and sending dozens of people to nearby hospitals.
I am sitting on top of my vehicle, and a couple people who were walking through the water came and sat here with me.
Sheriff Harrington and his fellow stranded motorists were among those safely pulled from vehicles or buildings amid raging floodwaters. Flood watches and warnings persisted throughout the region until early Monday morning, and in the daylight hours since, the water has started to recede, revealing the full scope of the damage. Vehicles swept away, now piled up along roadsides or under bridges. A number of homes and businesses flooded out. As Roswell begins the recovery process, it does so having set a new record. The National Weather Service says Saturday's rainfall hit 5.78 inches, just edging out the previous high mark set in November of 1901. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
The opposite problem in Butler County, Nebraska, as a wildfire broke out near David City. Here you see farmers helping out the fire departments to try and contain the blaze over the weekend. The smoke and flames forcing officials to close down a 15-mile stretch of Highway 92 for some time. No one was injured. The fire is now contained, but crews are concerned about continued high winds and possible dry conditions ahead. And areas of the west could really use more rain. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht lets us know if any is on the way.
We'll start off taking a look at that wind gust forecast for our Tuesday and our Wednesday. And the reason why is I want to pull out that next Clipper system. And notice it's not a strong low pressure system or a strong cold front, but it is going to be a weak Clipper that works down here to the south, increasing the wind gusts in and across parts of the Midwest. Not only on Tuesday, but again coming up for our Wednesday night into our Thursday, and that's where we're going to be approaching possibly wind gusts about 35, maybe 40 miles per hour through the Midwest with this front pushing through. Some cooler air will be in behind it, but I'm not expecting us to stay down below average for an extended period of time in and across the Midwest, the Southeast, or even the East. But we got a couple of waves that are going to be coming through, cold fronts, that are going to kick up the wind before temperatures go back up on the other side of some of those fronts. So again, there's Thursday at 3 o'clock in the morning. And cabbage harvest is nearing an end in Ohio. Steve sharing this video. Just look at the beautiful purple coloring. He says he's seeing excellent yields and quality out of the field. Great to hear. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
California health officials are now confirming 13 cases of human avian flu in the state. It says all 13 are in people located in the Central Valley and all had direct contact with infected dairy cattle. However, the agency says evidence continues to suggest only animal-to-human spread of the virus in California. They say all the individuals have experienced mild symptoms and haven't needed to be hospitalized. They also continue to say the risk to the general public remains low. But more cases of avian flu in humans are expected among those who have regular contact with infected dairy cattle. As for dairy cattle, there are now 323 herds impacted in 14 states. ADM is facing a lawsuit following an explosion at a plant in central Illinois in April of last year. The lawsuit was filed in court last week by a worker. He claims he was working at the West plant in Decatur when a supervisor told him to shut down a grain leg tube that started smoking. An explosion happened when the tube was opened. The employee says he was in an induced coma for 2 to 3 weeks following that incident. It's reported investigators with OSHA found that ADM failed to inspect or test critical safety systems in the explosion that injured the employee who filed suit, along with 2 others. The lawsuit claims ADM had fire and explosion suppression systems in place, but the systems weren't working. ADM says it has focused on safety efforts company-wide. We told you about a lot of corn buys to Mexico, but where's China? China's soybean imports from the U.S. have surged, but Brazil remains the top supplier. It's reported that of China's 11.37 million metric tons of soybean imports in September, more than half of that, 8.45 million metric tons, came from Brazil, while 1.71 million metric tons came from the U.S. That's a 13-fold surge from last year. For the January to September time period, soybean imports from Brazil rose 13%, while arrivals from the U.S. fell 15%. Grains managed to turn things around on Monday. I'll have more on what led to this round of buying in markets now. And later, a walk in the woods to take a closer look at the stars of the forest, the trees in the country.
Scan now to register for the Milk Business Conference 2024. Early bird rate expires October 31st.
An investment arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has just made a big farmland buy. Its group Farmland Reserve has agreed to pay $289 million to purchase 46 farms in 8 states from farmland partners. It adds up to more than 41,000 acres of farmland. The farms are located in North and South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. In a news release, seller Farmland Partners says it strongly believes its farmer tenants will have an excellent partner moving forward. Farmland Reserve says its earnings support the mission of the church and its religious, humanitarian, educational, and charitable good works. It's reported Farmland Reserve owns more than 1 million acres of U.S. farmland. Corn and soybeans ending higher on Monday. Dave Chatterton is back with analysis. Okay, did the support in corn and soybeans come from just corrected buying or all of these export sales that we've seen on the flash reports?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more the former, Michelle. I think there's a little bit of money flow issue going on in the markets. Certainly the export sales are welcome. They're needed. We want all of them that we can see, and they have improved. The pace has improved here, particularly in corn over the last few weeks. But I think the true story, this week and last week will probably be money flow as we get a little bit closer to not only an election, but also the next USDA WASDE report coming up that second week of November. If we look at what happened last week, funds, pretty aggressive sellers in the grains, they went, back to almost a net even in the corn and soybeans, and then ended up selling over 50,000 corn contracts and I think almost 20,000 bean contracts net last week. So some of that position got reestablished today as they moved back towards a more neutral stance. Michelle, it was a low volume trade, not a lot of significant new news for the market to work with.
So Dave, do you get this tug of war back and forth then? The specs sell, you get down into value levels where end users come in and buy, and then it goes back and forth, or not?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we might be stuck here for just a little bit. We've certainly got a little bit of tail end harvest pressure, particularly, on the corn side where there are still some bushels out there. We're starting to see the piles get bigger, the logistics get pressed just a little bit. We've got an improvement in weather in South America, keeping a little bit of a check in the bean complex. And we've got Russia continuing to offer wheat at, steady to lower values and showing, no inclination to increase those values, keeping a check on the wheat export market. On the other side of that, as you said, we've got a little bit of positioning here. We do have, I think a desire by some of these money managers to get a little bit more neutral in their grain positions as we get into the election, certainly.
So can we at least say for the time being, corn and soybeans have probably been able to hold contract lows and will be able to going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty safe bet, particularly in corn. It looks like we're stuck in a kind of a broader, $4.30 to $4 to $4.30 or $4.34 range. Beans haven't been able to push back above that $10 level. I think they're going to have trouble doing that, Michelle, unless we get, a weather problem redeveloping in South America, particularly in Brazil. On the downside, again, I don't think there's the appetite here to continue to push this lower.
Thanks so much, Dave Chatterton with Strategic Farm Marketing. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
So as we were talking about earlier, not much in the way of rain chances to go along with some of the stronger wind gusts. But the other thing that we're noting, cold fronts, a couple of them coming through, but nothing too strong that is going to keep temperatures down below average for an extended period of time. These are basically conditions where we bounce down and then come right back up with our temperatures in and across nearly 2/3 of the United States. I say that with high confidence of above normal temps towards the end of October and into early November. That ridge is going to set up once again for 2/3 of the United States. That means we have 1/3 of the United States that's going to be kind of the opposite. And that's where the blue comes into play. Chances of rain really kind of isolated to the west coast with these cooler than average temperatures. You got Oregon and also into the northeast, into Washington, northwest into Washington, where temperatures are going to be at or below average during this time frame. So between the 28th and the 3rd, the end of October, early November. And again, the pattern is starting to shift. What we are seeing now is something we typically see earlier in the month of October. So by the time we get into November, that cold air has settled in and across the United States. Everything's off by about maybe 3 weeks or so. So we're getting these occasional shots of cool air rather than cold air that's going to settle things and keep them around average for the United States. But again, I'm just talking about 2/3 of the United States, completely different story on the West Coast with the bits of energy coming through, giving rain and cool temperatures. So this is Tuesday at 7 a.m. As we look at that wheat clipper system come through, you also start to see this bump up to the north. That's that next ridge that's going to result in those warmer than average and dry conditions for a large portion of the United States by the end of October, early November. So the jet stream looks like this Wednesday and into Thursday. You got that ridge overhead, and really anything that comes through that would provide the rain chances or cooler temperatures really doesn't start to show up till maybe next Monday. We'll start off with Wallagrass, Maine, partly cloudy, high of 59 degrees. Waltman, Wyoming, partly cloudy, high of 64 degrees. Walworth, Wisconsin, sounds like a grocery store. I'd visit a Walworth. and Walworth, Wisconsin. Morning clouds, high 71, low of 48.
Coming up, do parents really want whole milk back in schools? See the results of a new poll. And later, a walk in the woods that's about more than just enjoying nature in the country. While milk prices have been higher lately, the latest USDA forecast calls for the all milk price to slightly decline as we move into the end of the year. In its October supply and demand report, the agency lowered its milk production forecast for this year. Now, it's based on a slight decrease in growth for milk production per cow, dropping 100 million pounds to 225.8 billion pounds compared to last month's report. It's also forecasting dairy imports to rise, mainly due to increased cheese and butter imports. Now, as far as exports, fat-based exports are stable, but it says next year could see a rise in butter exports. Lower butter and cheese prices have led to reduced price forecasts for this year and next. The all milk price is forecasted at $22.80 per hundredweight for 2024 and $22.75 per hundredweight for next year. A new poll says more parents want whole and 2% milk back in schools. The poll was conducted by Morning Consult, but was commissioned by the International Dairy Foods Association, with 88% of parents saying that whole milk and 2% milk should be options for children in public schools. It says 91% of parents serve whole or 2% to their school-age children at home, and 81% support Congress passing the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act to make the options available. Now, 9 in 10 view drinking milk as an important component of children's daily nutritional intake. IDFA says since the two were removed from school meals more than a decade ago, school milk consumption and meal participation have declined. Still ahead, it's a great day to go for a walk in the woods. But these students were on a specific mission while enjoying nature in the country. Tennessee has more than 100 different species of trees, and 4-H youth are learning to identify those trees and the overall health of woodlands. The University of Tennessee's Charles Denny has more on the skills gained by a walk in the woods.
When you take a walk in the woods, how many trees can you name? Even for avid outdoorsy types, it would only be a couple. Cedar, pine, maybe maple and oak. But this group, they're more advanced. These 4-H'ers are competing in a forestry judging competition at Cedars of Lebanon State Park, Cedar Forest as the locals call it. Youngsters like Conrad Miller say the knowledge they gain here can be handy.
So we had a tree in our backyard, and I was actually able to figure out that it was diseased.
Not only are they learning more about the natural resources of our state, they're also learning some of those practical skills, decision making, critical thinking, and of course there's a math component from the tree measurement.
That's what these 4-H'ers are doing here, using what's called a Biltmore stick to gauge a tree's size and potentially the amount of timber it could produce.
Roughly right at 52% of our state is covered with trees, and so somebody has to be an expert in knowing how to measure that commodity, trees.
The main part of this competition is identifying trees. That's challenging with so many different species here at this state park and more than 100 different species across the state of Tennessee. Inside a nearby lodge, 4-H'ers must name dozens of trees as well as the diseases that might impact them. And in this field, a compass and pacing course where they measure distances. 4-H leaders say these are skills kids might use someday as a future landowner.
To give you an example, if you own property and you wanted to evaluate that property for the value of the timber or the quality of the timber or health, then you would be looking at the size of the tree, the type of trees that you have, insects and diseases.
Emmy Bibbings from Smith County is already a reigning state champion in forestry judging and placed third in a national contest. She says ID work takes a lot of study, but you can get it in time.
It's been a couple years and like a lot of flashcards later, and I can confidently know pretty much all of them.
A productive walk in the woods can be a competition and a learning experience, a tree-lined and leaf-filled outdoor classroom. And in nature, you can gain confidence in knowing what you're seeing and being able to name it. This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thanks, Charles. That's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at AgDay, I'm Michelle Rook. Have yourself a great day out in farm country.